Let's be brutally honest for a moment, the dream that keeps you up at night, the vision of a life-changing financial windfall from your Iraqi Dinar or Vietnamese dong investment, could very easily turn into your worst financial nightmare overnight, and it might not be for the reason you think. The greatest threat to your potential wealth isn't necessarily a government conspiracy or a global bank blocking the revaluation. The greatest threat, right now, staring you in the face, is you and the simple, costly mistakes you were likely to make in those critical first hours and days when the announcement finally hits the news. I've spent months analyzing not just the currency markets, but the human psychology behind these investments, studying countless stories from other high-stakes financial events like bond redemptions or cryptocurrency surges, and a terrifying pattern emerges where ordinary people, driven by excitement and a lifetime of pent-up anticipation, make irreversible errors that cost them tens of thousands, sometimes even the entire fortune they were sitting on. The first and most catastrophic mistake I see poised to happen is the instant rush to social media and online forums the second you hear the RV news. Your heart will be pounding, your hands will be shaking, and your first instinct will be to celebrate with the only community that understands this journey, the online groups. This single action, this desperate need for validation, is a trap. The moment you post, it's happened. My bank is confirming the new rate. You have just painted a massive target on your back for every scam artist, every financial predator, and every distant relative who suddenly remembers your name. You are no longer operating in a speculative space. You are now handling verified, life-altering money, and the wolves are waiting. They are monitoring these groups right now, building lists, and the second the RV goes live, their first resource for finding victims will be the public celebration posts in dinar and dong groups. The second mistake, equally devastating, is the paralysis of misinformation. There will be chaos. One source will say the exchange window is only 72 hours, another will say you must go to a specific, authorized bank, a third will claim you need a special certificate from a dealer you've never heard of. In this fog of war, panic sets in. You'll see people in these groups frantically selling their currencies to each other at a fraction of the potential rate out of sheer fear, or worse, rushing to the first authorized exchange center that pops up online, which is nothing more than a brilliantly designed fake website created hours after the announcement. I've analyzed takedown notices and scam alerts from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center for similar schemes, and the sophistication is staggering. These sites will have fake licenses, fake customer testimonials, and even fake countdown timers pressuring you to act before you lose your window. They will look more legitimate than your actual bank's website. And this leads directly into the third critical mistake, the one that breaks families, becoming your own bank. You might think that once the new rate is live, any bank in the country will be falling over themselves to exchange your currency. The reality, based on protocols from the Federal Reserve and compliance directives at major international banks, is that most local bank branches, the one on your street corner, will have absolutely no clue what to do with you. The teller you hand your millions of dong to will likely look at it with confusion, call over a manager, who will then retreat to a back office to spend an hour on the phone with their regional compliance officer. This isn't a simple currency exchange like swapping euros for dollars. This is a potential monetary restructuring event, triggering immediate high-value transaction reports and intense scrutiny under the Bank Secrecy Act. If you walk in unprepared, with no prior relationship and no appointment, you risk being turned away at the counter, your notes deemed suspicious or not accepted for exchange, causing delays that could see you miss the most favorable initial rates as the market quickly stabilizes. The clock will be ticking, the pressure will be immense, and in that state of mind, with your life stream hanging in the balance, a single misstep born from excitement or fear can wipe it all away before you even get close to the money. So you've managed to avoid the initial frenzy, you've kept your news off social media, and you're sitting on your currency with a cool head, but now comes the most complex and legally perilous phase of the entire process, the actual interaction with the financial system, and this is where the next three mistakes have bankrupted people in similar situations throughout history. The fourth mistake, and perhaps the most financially devastating one after the scams, is walking into your bank completely unprepared for the reality of their internal procedures. You see, you've been dreaming of this moment for years, picturing yourself handing over the currency and walking out with a confirmation of your new wealth, but what you haven't pictured is the bank's mandatory currency transaction report, the CTR that is filed for any cash transaction over $10,000, and more importantly, the suspicious activity report, the SAR, which a bank manager can file at their discretion for any transaction they deem unusual. And let me be very clear, a sudden, one-time deposit or exchange of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars from an individual customer with no prior history of such high-value transactions is the very definition of unusual in their system. I have spoken with former compliance officers, and their number one trigger is a customer who seems uninformed, nervous, or demanding. If you cannot calmly and confidently explain the source of your currency, provide any documentation you have from the original purchase, and articulate the legal basis for the exchange, you are flagging yourself for a world of financial scrutiny that could freeze your assets for months. The fifth mistake, which is a slow-burning fuse that explodes much later, is the complete and utter neglect of tax preparation. The moment you exchange that currency, the United States Internal Revenue Service views the entire gain, the difference between your purchase price and the exchange value, as ordinary income for that tax year. We are not talking about a long-term capital gains rate here. This is treated as a windfall, and it could potentially push you into the highest tax bracket imaginable. I've analyzed cases from lottery winners and people who received massive legal settlements, and a common theme in their subsequent bankruptcies was the failure to set aside the tax money up front. They spent the entire amount, bought houses, cars, and gave money to family, only to be hit with a tax bill a year later that they could no longer pay. You must, and I cannot stress this enough, you must have a plan to immediately set aside a significant portion, potentially 40% or more, of your net proceeds into a separate, secure account solely for your tax obligation. This requires you to have a relationship with a certified public accountant or a tax attorney before the RV happens, not after. You cannot afford to be shopping for a financial professional when you are already holding the money. That is when you are most vulnerable to bad advice from unqualified people who will flock to you. And this leads directly to the sixth, and most heartbreaking mistake, the one that destroys families and erodes your very soul, the failure to have a psychological and relational plan for the moment the money hits your account. The data on sudden wealth syndrome is chilling and unequivocal. A study published in the National Library of Medicine on lottery winners found that a staggering 70% of people who come into sudden money end up bankrupt within a few years, and their rates of depression, divorce, and substance abuse skyrocket. This isn't about math, it's about the human mind. The first 48 hours after your wealth is confirmed will be the most emotionally volatile of your entire life. Every single person in your life, from your closest family to acquaintances you haven't spoken to in decades, will suddenly have an opinion, a need, a desperate story, and a handout. Without a pre-written, ironclad plan that you and your immediate family have agreed upon in advance for how to handle requests for money, you will be torn apart by guilt, obligation, and emotional blackmail. You need a script, a simple "I'm working with a financial team on a plan, and I cannot make any decisions right now" that you can repeat without deviation. Your phone will be ringing non-stop, your social media inboxes will be flooded, and the pressure to be the family hero will be immense. If you think you are immune to this, you are already making the mistake. This period tests the strongest of relationships and exposes every hidden crack in your family's foundation. Protecting your wealth means protecting your peace, and that defense must be constructed now, in the calm before the storm, not in the middle of the hurricane. Now, understanding these 6 catastrophic mistakes is only half the battle. The other half, the part that will actually secure your future, is implementing the defensive strategies that turn you from a vulnerable target into an informed, prepared, and unshakable investor who is ready to navigate this event with the precision of a seasoned professional. Let's start with the banking dilemma. Your first call on the day of the announcement should not be to a friend or a forum. It should be to the wealth management or private client division of a major, top-tier international bank like Citi, HSBC, or JP Morgan. You call them because they are the institutions that will have received the official circulars from the Federal Reserve and the respective central banks. They are the ones with the established protocols for handling such events, and they deal with high-net-worth individuals as a matter of daily routine. Your goal is to bypass the confused local teller entirely. You establish a relationship with a private banker now, before this happens. How? You schedule an appointment today, presenting yourself as a potential client with future assets, and you ask them directly about their policies on exotic currency exchanges and their private client onboarding process. This single move, done in the calm of the present, will give you a direct, VIP channel when chaos is engulfing everyone else. Next, let's build your financial fortress, starting with the tax bomb. You must, immediately, locate and consult with a certified public accountant who has experience with international income or a tax attorney, not a general-purpose financial advisor. You present your situation hypothetically, and you ask them to model the tax implications based on different potential exchange values. This does two things. It gives you a terrifyingly clear picture of the net cash you will actually have left after the government takes its share, and it forges a relationship with a professional who will be your first call during the exchange. This person will also be crucial in setting up the structures you'll need for asset protection, such as a trust. A revocable living trust, established before you receive the funds, becomes your single most powerful shield against the onslaught of personal requests and lawsuits. When someone asks you for money, you can honestly say, "My assets are held in a trust, and distributions require the agreement of my trustee," effectively taking the emotional decision out of your hands and placing it into a legal framework. This isn't about being cold, it's about being smart and preserving your relationships by removing the direct pressure from them. Finally, we must address the psychological warfare you will face. Your plan for the first week is simple: silence and invisibility. You do not answer calls from numbers you don't recognize. You do not post on social media. You have a prepared, brief statement for close family that you deliver once, firmly, such as, "We are safe and everything is being handled professionally. We need a few weeks of quiet to get through the legal process, and we will reach out when we are ready." Your immediate actions are logistical. You meet with your private banker and your tax attorney, you execute the exchange, you fund your trust, and you set aside the massive tax portion into a separate, government-only money market account. Then, and this is critical, you do nothing. You make no major purchases. You quit no jobs. You promise no one anything. You allow the money to sit, protected, while the initial emotional tsunami inside you and around you subsides. This period of deliberate inaction is what separates the long-term wealthy from the tragic statistics of lottery winners. You have waited this long for the RV, you can afford to wait a few more months to ensure you keep it. The dream is not just in acquiring the wealth, the real dream is in sustaining it, in using it to build a legacy of security and freedom for generations, not a cautionary tale of lost fortunes and broken relationships. The difference between those two outcomes is not luck. It is the plan you create and the discipline you exercise today, right now, before the storm arrives.